Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining another week, and Happy New Year. Have a great show planned for you here for the first one of 2019. My guest this week will be an unusual back-to-back weeks with the same guest. Will be Mitch Vingle, longtime beat writer for the Charleston newspapers who covered WVU sports. We'll be talking all about Dana Holgerson's departure as the WVU coach and who may be the prospects that may take his place in Morgantown. But first, we'll start off with some of our usual features this year. And as I hold my hands up here, I realize I've got a bandage here, and my New Year started off just fantastic. It takes a special person to do this. So, one day I cut my thumb with the razor blade because I went to grab my deodorant and it slipped and hit my razor. And the very next day, did the same thing going to get my toothpaste. So I'm like getting razors out of my house and out of my life. So I have to go to an electric razor or something. So the New Year started off fantastic for me. But I thought I'd start with a quote about the New Year. And this comes from Oprah Winfrey, of all people. And she said, "Cheers to a new year and another chance for us to get it right." And I thought that was particularly interesting, another chance to get it right, because really when the calendar turns, it does present you with kind of a fresh look on life and a chance to say, okay, what can I do this year? I always want to say I want it to be better than last year in different areas of my life, whether it be my personal life, my work life, my spiritual life. I always wanted to try to be better. I want it to be better each day, but certainly each year. And some years are better than others. There's no doubt about that when I look back at them. And I think it's a good idea to make New Year's resolutions. People always talk about, well, I'm going to lose weight or I'm going to do this. And those are fine resolutions. But I think really if you break them down into categories of different areas of your life, whether they be personal, work-related, family-related, spiritual, and then write them down and then review them. So many people make a New Year's resolution and they forget all about it. But if you write it down and put it somewhere where you'll see it every day, maybe somewhere in your closet where you have to go to get your shirts every day, maybe somewhere in your bathroom or maybe on your desk at work, somewhere where you can see it every single day or at least once a week and review it. And there's nothing wrong with changing or amending or altering your New Year's resolutions as you go along, because they need to be realistic. And sometimes you get a few months into the year or midway through the year and you say, this just isn't a good one. Or maybe you can add to it and something else you like to do during the course of the year. My dad's always told me, write down your goals. If you write them down, it's much more likely that you'll achieve them and stick to them. So I think it's a good idea to do that, and certainly this time of year, good to do it. But always try to make any particular year better than the last year. And I think Oprah Winfrey's right. It is always a chance for us to get it right. So I'm certainly going to try to do that this year. I don't know that I will. I rarely feel like I got it right, but I always try to get it better, at least, than I did the year before. Some big events here in the area this weekend. The CRC Cancer Research Classic basketball tournament that's been going on for over a decade now here in Wheeling, started by Dr. Gregory Merrick at Wheeling Hospital to really bring attention to men's health. And of course, he's an oncologist there at Wheeling Hospital and also a big basketball aficionado. And he's brought in the top high school teams in the country now for the last decade or so to Wheeling to play in this event that's held the first weekend in January. And this year, a new venue, instead of being at Wheeling Jesuit University, moving to West Banco Arena downtown. Bigger venue. I mean, it's starting to get a little bit tight because the event draws a lot of attention and televised a lot of times now. Some of the big games are televised nationally, and a lot of attention on this event. And some of the players, a number of them have gone on to play at the high college ranks and many of them in the NBA. Some of the great NBA players you see now have played in this tournament over the course of the years, and be held Friday and Saturday, and it is worth going out to see if you haven't done it before. You will see extremely high quality basketball. If you have kids that are basketball fans, or if you're just a basketball fan yourself, it's worth going out to see it, but also it's worth supporting it for a number of reasons, because it brings people into Wheeling, gives attention to the city of Wheeling, but also it's for a very good cause and bringing attention to men's health, particularly prostate health and things of that nature. So go out and check out the game or the games if you can. Wheeling Park, Wheeling Central both be part of the event, so a couple local teams involved, but some of these national teams, they just play unbelievable basketball. And speaking of basketball events at West Banco Arena, in just a couple months, of course, another big event will be held there, the Mountain East Conference Tournament, which West Liberty University, Wheeling Jesuit University are a part of, will hold its conference tournament at West Banco Arena for the first time. That's both the men's and women's tournament, and a lot of excitement there. A lot of teams and fans be coming into the city of Wheeling, and a lot of excitement. It's really hard over the years to get down to Charleston to watch the games. I mean, it starts during the weekdays, and people would have to take off work, take kids out of school. But now, with the games being right here in Wheeling, a great opportunity to see some exciting basketball. There's nothing like tournament basketball, whether it be the conference tournaments or whether it be the NCAA tournaments where you lose and you're done. I think it's some of the most exciting events in sports when you have that losing you're out mentality. And so a lot of fun to watch those games, and to have that here now in Wheeling is really a big plus, not only for the universities that are located here in the city, but also for the city and the community itself. You know, people will be staying in hotels, the teams, the fans of the teams, eating in restaurants, going and supporting things here in the local area. So really great to see the Mountain East Conference tournament coming here to the Friendly City. That'll be a couple months away, and we'll talk about it more as we approach that time frame. We need to take a break. When I come back, I'll have my guest Mitch Vingle with me. We'll be talking all about Dana Holgerson's departure from WVU. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
When reviewing your oil and gas offers or royalty check statements, do you wonder, am I being offered a fair amount? Do I feel comfortable reading the statement? Do I have peace of mind? If you answered no to these questions, you need Bordas Mineral Management. Our passion is helping mineral owners protect and expand their mineral wealth. Our examiners tell you whether you're being treated fairly and getting paid what is rightfully yours. Bordas Mineral Management. Be protected. Have peace of mind.
Recommended by the highest authorities. Danoon Lumber.
Looks like a bad one's coming. Yeah. Right?
Welcome back to the show. My favorite time each week is when I have a guest with me, and this week's no different. My guest is Mitch Vingle, longtime beat writer on WVU Sports for the Charleston Papers, and was my guest last week. Didn't expect to have him back so soon, but good to have you back here, Mitch.
It's good to be back. We had so much fun, I guess. Give
Yeah.
it another whirl, huh?
Didn't expect to be here talking about a WVU coaching vacancy, but there's nobody I know better to talk about that than you, because for decades you covered WVU sports before coming to Wheelhouse Creative here in Wheeling just a couple months ago. But
I've been through a lot of them.
Yeah.
A lot of coaching searches. Hell, going back to Don Nealon and his replacement and all that stuff. So been through a lot.
Yeah. So Dana Holgerson, though, a bit of a surprise maybe to a lot of people, leaving Morgantown to go to what's commonly referred to as a Group of Five school in Houston. The Power Five conferences considered to be the SEC, the ACC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, and the Pac-12 are the Power Five conferences. Then the next are considered to be the Group of Five, including the AAC, of which Houston is a member. So typically considered to be a step down, but Houston paying Dana Holgerson, $20 million over 5 years. He's got a Texas recruiting base there, and he decided to leave town.
There's a lot of money in Houston. If you've ever been there, it's been building up for years and years. It's just flush with cash, and I think Dana knew what was coming in the next year with his West Virginia team. I think he wanted to get out because he saw what was coming.
Yeah, you look at the bowl game last week, and looking at the quarterback situation in particular. I mean, I wasn't impressed at all with Allison. I really think whoever the new coach is going to need to look toward maybe a graduate transfer or something of that nature. Just didn't look like he's ready to be the guy, or maybe may not ever be ready to be the guy. And
And I was surprised they didn't try the Trey Lowe kid a little bit more. It surprised me they didn't have him more up to speed. I mean, they put him in a couple times, but they were really high on him when they recruited him. I don't know if you remember, they even talked about him playing baseball at WVU as well, and have let him do that because he was such a nice recruit for them. So to not really get a glimpse of him, because we saw what Jack Allison did, and I'm sure they saw it in practice.
Yeah, and you look at not only losing, of course, Will Greer, but also the receivers that are out the door, and Sills and Jennings and Sims and Wesco at tight end, and then you look at Yadni Kajust out from the line. David Long's going to the NFL, and look at that secondary. That losing guys there, the defensive line. I mean, it's just across the board.
Yeah.
It's really unusual on a college football team to lose that many guys at different levels across the board on both offense and defense. But it's happening this year in
Well, and
Morgantown.
that's what happens when you roll the dice with transfers, and they really hit big when you got Jabril Robinson and then Kenny Bigelow on that defensive line to go with that offense, you thought you really had something. And that's why I thought, and I think a lot of other people did, that this was a year that they could really do it. They could beat Oklahoma at home and get to that championship or beyond.
Well, and I think you make a good point, Mitch, which is that, one of the big reasons that Dana Holgorsen may have said, hey, it's time to move on, is that if there was going to be a year that he could do it in Morgantown, it was probably this year. I mean, he kind of had all of his chips, pushed in.
Right.
This was an all-in year, with these guys, and said, okay, I'm going to take our shot here. We've got this, maybe once every 20-year type quarterback. We've got the receivers around them. We've got a decent line. We brought in these transfers on defense. This had shaped up to be the year, and then you look at the end result, and you've got an 8-4 season, a loss in the bowl game, losing 3 games in conference, including a couple of the teams that you really think, looking at the preseason schedule, you think you're going to beat Iowa State. Oklahoma State was down this year. But games that really, as you said, Oklahoma at home, games that kept them out of that Big 12 conference hunt, and instead it's like, well, where do we go from here?
Well, and I think that kind of defines Dana Holgorsen's tenure. I mean, he was good, but he was never great. He never won big games. I mean, the Clemson in the Orange Bowl using Billy's kids, let's face it. And then he comes back. What would be next?
Well, that's a
Texas?
Good point. Well,
the Texas game this year?
I was looking at that. So let's go back to the start of his tenure. Of course, he was hired as to be the coach in waiting and offensive coordinator by Oliver Luck when he was the athletic director. So he's going to come in. It's supposed to be a year under Bill Stewart. That was a disaster from the get-go. I mean, we all know about the allegations of Coach Stewart trying to dig into Coach Holgorsen's past.
Dunlap, yeah.
And so immediately Bill Stewart's out, and Dana Holgorsen, instead of being the coach in waiting, is the actual head coach. But then goes and has a great first season, wins the Big East Conference, go to the Orange Bowl, beat Clemson 70-33, set a record for most points ever in a bowl game. And it looks like, hey, this is going to be fantastic. And then the following year will be the start of the Big 12 with Geno Smith back, Tavon Austin, Stedman Bailey. And really the idea was Oliver Luck was bringing in Dana Holgorsen because he had been in that world of the Big 12, coaching out in that part of the country and coming up under guys at Texas Tech and Oklahoma State, et cetera. And this is the guy that can help us compete in this conference when we get in there. And really it just never came to fruition. I mean, the highest finish ever was a tie for second, and just didn't happen.
Well, you think about West Virginia fans had so much confidence in Dana Holgorsen because the hire was from Oliver Luck. I mean, Oliver is I know a lot of people didn't like the way he brought Holgorsen in, but everybody respects Oliver Luck's football knowledge. They know that the guy knows the game inside and out as a player, as an administrator, within the NFL, his son. I mean, so everybody was very confident in this pick. And I think everybody's got to be a little bit disappointed in how it ended. I mean, 61-41. I think he was 33-30 in Big 12 play. I mean, again, there were some 10 wins. It was good, but it wasn't great.
Well, and of course, the first 10-win season came in the Big East, and then just the one in the Big 12 conference, and couldn't beat Oklahoma. Couldn't really get over that hump. I mean, if you want to get over the hump in the Big 12, you got to be able to beat Oklahoma. And you alluded to earlier, the big win against Clemson in the Orange Bowl the first year, and then I guess you could maybe point to that big shootout over Baylor the next year is kind of a big win because it was high scoring.
More fun.
It was.
That was more fun.
It wasn't, and it wasn't one of the big boys of what I would say
Right.
of the Big 12. The Texas, the Oklahomas of the world. So you kind of do have to fast forward almost to the Texas game this year and say that's the next big win. And you're talking over close to a decade worth of career in Morgantown.
Yeah, and the reason the Texas game was because it was dramatic at the very end,
Yeah.
and it was in the national spotlight, and that's why that was a big game. And it set up the Oklahoma game.
Yeah, and I think also, the going for two at the end and the quote of let's go win this game, that type of thing. And so,
And we saw when Houston introduced Holgorsen, they used that catchphrase. You want to go win some games, let's go win some games with him holding the Red Bull. And
yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. I mean, it was just a really quick little Twitter thing on Twitter and social media, but he's holding the Red Bull, which is kind of his trademark, and he's using that catchphrase, so to speak. But I think looking at it, we'll talk a little bit later about maybe potential replacements for Dana Holgorsen in Morgantown, but I think Houston is a really good fit for him, to be quite frank. I think he kind of run his course in Morgantown, and you look at Houston. I was just saying earlier today, Houston is really a better fit for a team to be in the Big 12 than WVU is.
Right.
I mean, Houston is a Big 12 type team. I mean, or a Big 12 type city, or down there in Texas. Huge, potential recruiting base there. I mean, Texas is just talent rich. I mean, you think about even the different TV shows we watch, like Friday Night Lights over the years.
Right.
I mean, they're down there in Texas because Texas high school football is so big. Of all those guys to go after that want to play that style of football, as you alluded to earlier, tons of money in Texas, big time boosters like Fertitta that's brought him in, that'll spend money to try to up that program, and I think they'll be in a Power 5 conference before too long.
Texas, California, Florida.
Yeah.
If you can recruit there, you're good to go.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens. He becomes now the highest paid coach ever in a Group of 5 school. As I said, $4 million a year.
By a lot.
Yeah, so I think he'll do well down there in Houston. As an aside, I just don't think that the WVU fans ever really latched onto him and felt that he was one of their own, because Bill Stewart was the homegrown guy that he kind of came in and Stewart was shown the door. I think it made it tough for Dana Holgorsen from the get-go, and I think he's really done some things that will help the program down the road. But I do think it was probably time for both sides to say, we need something different.
It was time. Yeah, and I went on Twitter. I went back to when Nealon left. It was just time.
Yeah.
It's just, you don't have to get real complicated into it. It's Holgorsen. It was done. He tried to make it work. West Virginia tried to make it work. The fans gave him a bunch of chances to endear himself to them, and it just didn't work. He just, like Billy, that's one thing. Everybody loved Billy because he was from here, because he was a nice guy. He was approachable. And Dana, you just never got that feeling that he could be approached,
We need to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue talking about the WVU football program and who may be next. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
Lifetime of savings starts here. Belmont Savings Bank, focused on your future.
So, how was your first day?
Long. So, Josh asked me about you.
Daddy's home. Go get him.
For your home, for your life, for more than 50 years. The Hardwood Specialists. DeNoon Lumber.
Welcome back to the show. I've been speaking with my guest this week, Mitch Vingle, now with Wheelhouse Creative, but up until a few months ago, beat writer covering WVU football. And we're talking about the WVU football program, Mitch, and Coach Dana Holgorsen leaving. But now let's talk about, replacement. You covered for a long time. Who do you think would be a good fit?
Well, it's one of those things where I think West Virginia should take their time, and they don't have a top 25 recruiting class, so there's no real rush. So my thing was West Virginia should take some time, look over some candidates, more than one or two, and let the candidates decide this thing.
Neil Brown
is the guy, right?
Yeah.
As far as I know. Here's what I've understand and come to know. President Gee is in with Shane Lyons, who's the athletic director, but President Gee will let Shane Lyons make the call. From what I understand, Neil Brown is the guy that Lyons likes. He's the coach at Troy. a very enthusiastic coach, a young coach, I think at 38 years old. Very good offense. And Luke Fickell is the guy that President Gee likes because of his time at Ohio State.
Yeah, to remind people, Luke Fickell's the guy that when served as the interim coach kind of between Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer for that time period, and did it pretty well. And Gordon Gee was the president at that time, so he's got
and
some
worked
experience
closely with Fickell.
So that's I think those two guys emerging. But who are some other guys you take a look at if you were the Mountaineers?
I sat down, looked at the list. Like I said, I would have put a list of 10, 15 guys. Chip Long, offensive coordinator, Notre Dame. Nick Saban was rumored to be trying to steal him for offensive coordinator. Jeff Scott, co-offensive coordinator, Clemson, ACC Recruiter of the Year by 24/7 Sports. That's what West Virginia needs, is somebody who can come in and recruit. That would be number one on my list. Greg Schiano, a lot of people know him from Rutgers, but he's the defensive coordinator at Ohio State. Did a great job recruiting the Northeast this year. Mike Elko, defensive coordinator at Texas A&M. Tony Elliott, co-offensive coordinator at Clemson. Neil Brown, head coach at Troy, we talked about. Fickell, Scott Satterfield, Appalachian State, young, successful, runs an exciting offense. Lane Kiffin, if you want to grab some headlines, there you go. Who's at FAU. I'd do the background check on Lane if I were doing it, but Herb Hand is the co-offensive coordinator at Texas, used to be at West Virginia, does a great job with the media, great job with social media. He's kind of a guy for this age. And we spoke beforehand, Jake Spavital. I know that he probably wouldn't go over well with WVU fans, but one of these days I think the kid's going to make a good head coach. I thought Cal may give him a shot at one point, but he's articulate. He's great with the media. He's coached a Heisman Trophy winner. I just think one day he's going to have a great career.
Speaking of WVU assistants, Tony Gibson being mentioned, the players are all going out on Twitter saying they'd like to see Coach Gibson. I mean, the defense really kind of struggled this year, but he's kind of a player's favorite.
Yeah, and Gibby is, because he's from Van, the man from Van, we always say, and he's great to listen to. He's great to interview. I think a lot of people would like to, but he needed a better defensive performance this year. That's what hurt him.
I'm going to throw one more name out there that it's not being circulated a bunch, but I'd love to see Gordon Gee make a phone call to Jim Tressel. Of course, now at Youngstown State, not coaching, but in administration, and 66 years old now. But I think he probably still have a good 5-8 years left in him, and of course a great coach during his time at Youngstown State and Ohio State.
He just has a very good job right now.
He does. It's a pretty good spot. Well, Mitch, we'll keep our eye on this story, and maybe next week we'll have something to report on who the new coach is. But I appreciate you being here again this week to
So am I
talk
come back
about
next
this.
week? Or?
We'll have to see. We'll see what happens. Hey, thanks for being here, Mitch.
Buddy.
All right, we need to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit of NFL playoffs and how did the Steelers miss out. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show. People in nursing homes are some of the most vulnerable members of our society. They're there because they can't take care of themselves. Those facilities have a duty to take care of our loved ones, and when they don't, it's important they're held accountable. We've not only collected record results against negligent nursing homes, but more importantly, we've helped so many families get the answers and closure they so badly needed.
Bordas and Bordas, fighting for justice.
Ho, 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 ho. Call Panhandle. Oh, thank goodness.
Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration is ready to handle any size emergency at a moment's notice. From our family to yours, Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Oh, ho, 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 ho.
Welcome back to the show. It's time to talk a little bit of sports. We'll talk professional sports. We'll start with the Pittsburgh Steelers missing the NFL playoffs for the first time in 5 years. Won last week in Cincinnati, but as they watched on the Jumbotron as their game ended, Cleveland Browns could not get it done. Even when the Steelers need Cleveland to do it and get it and win, can't figure out a way to do it. Baker Mayfield throws an interception on the last possession, allowing the Baltimore Ravens to win the AFC North, and the Steelers miss out on the playoffs. And this year, no Le'Veon Bell all year. Antonio Brown misses the last game, and now it's coming out that he just basically seemed to be disgruntled. I mean, what wasn't showing up, and maybe had a dispute with Ben Roethlisberger perhaps, wasn't communicating with Mike Tomlin. Misses the game basically because Tomlin said, "You're not playing. We haven't heard from you in a couple of days. You're out." And, begs the question, is it time to evaluate Mike Tomlin? A lot of people have felt yes. I think not yet. I think this is an important year coming up for Mike Tomlin, but I don't think it's time to really pull the plug just yet on the Mike Tomlin area in Pittsburgh. But Ben Roethlisberger, the career is coming to a close soon, and one Super Bowl win during that career, and 2 Super Bowl wins, but one during Mike Tomlin's time there, the first with Bill Cowher, of course. So, a lot to be evaluated. But I want to talk about something else. That's millennials, which is what Antonio Brown is, which Le'Veon Bell is. I see it in the workplace myself. I employ a lot of people, and this current generation of people 35 and under, it's a different breed of cat. I mean, you really have to look at them and say that they're not so much into necessarily team the way maybe older generations are. A lot of times it's about themselves, and all businesses and organizations have to adapt to that, including football organizations. Look, it's a business. This isn't the little league. This isn't even high school. And there are times when people may say, wow, he's acting that way. Just cut him, trade him, get rid of him. Stars are going to have to be treated differently. That's what they're going to expect, and you're going to have to put up with a little bit of that because there are only so many people that can compete and perform at that type of high level. And people are going to have to understand that some of those stars are going to have to get away with a little bit of things that others may not. I'm a little bit more old school. I'd like to not see that be the case, but they better adapt or they're going to have a struggle going forward. 4 games this weekend on tap for the NFL. Saturday, Colts at Texans. Andrew Luck, I think, performing at a pretty high level now after coming off of injury. I think they win this game on the road in Houston. Seattle at Dallas, the nightcap. I think the Cowboys have been a different team since adding Amari Cooper. I think they win this one, even though the Seahawks seem to have more fun than anybody in football because Pete Carroll just keeps everybody smiling. Then Sunday, the Chargers at the Ravens. I think the Ravens are a pretender. I don't think they can do it. Phillip Rivers has had a special year for the Chargers. I think the Chargers get this done on the road. And then the Eagles at the Bears. The Eagles had to sneak back in the playoffs. I said they would last week, but the Bears have had a great season. It's too tough to repeat in the NFL. I think Philadelphia's stay in the playoffs is short-lived. I'm going to go with the Saints and Patriots to be in the Super Bowl this year. Great quarterbacks, buys in the first round, experienced coaches. I think Saints versus Patriots in the Super Bowl this year. That's all the time that we have this week. Thanks for joining in. We'll see you again next time on The Jamie Bordas Show.